There is a moment in every winter storm when you begin to understand something is fundamentally wrong with the way we build today, and strangely, that realization doesn't come from a modern home, but from a forgotten cabin measured during a brutal Wisconsin night in 1986. Outside, the temperature plunged to 38 degrees Fahrenheit, the kind of cold that stiffens metal and freezes exposed skin in seconds. Yet inside that cabin, built in 1847, without fiberglass insulation, without a furnace, without anything that resembles the technology we rely on, its interior stayed at a steady, almost absurdly comfortable 68 degrees Fahrenheit, using nothing more than a small fire glowing faintly in the hearth. It wasn't a miracle or a lucky break. It was a structure built by people who understood winter as an adversary you don't overpower with brute force, but negotiate with through physics, mass, and patience. And the contrast becomes even sharper when you look at what happens inside a modern home during the same kind of storm. The lights go out, the furnace stops, the thermostat drops degree by degree like a countdown timer, pipes freeze, floorboards contract, and suddenly, a house filled with the latest materials becomes uninhabitable in a matter of hours. That single comparison forces a question we rarely dare to ask. What did medieval builders understand that we have forgotten? As we break down this investigation, I'd love to hear your experience. Have you ever lost heat during a winter night? And how fast did the cold take over your home? Let me know in the comments while we dive deeper. Walk into a modern home on a winter night and you can feel it trying to convince you it is safe. The soft hum of the furnace cycling every few minutes. The thermostat glowing like a promise that technology will hold the cold at bay. Yet all it takes is a single outage for that promise to collapse instantly, turning the house from a carefully heated shell into a trap that loses warmth faster than most people realize. The moment the power cuts, the air changes. The steady temperature begins slipping degree by degree. The silence grows heavy, and within an hour, the walls that felt solid suddenly radiate the kind of chill that seeps straight through clothing. Families gather in the living room with blankets layered over shoulders, their breath turning faintly visible as the cold spreads room by room. And somewhere in the distance, a pipe contracts with a sharp crack that sounds almost like a warning. Modern construction, for all its insulation and engineered materials, is built on the flawed belief that constant energy input will always be available. And without that steady stream of heat, the house reverts instantly to its primitive state, no better at resisting winter than a thin tent in the wind. What we call comfort turns out to be a temporary illusion held together by electricity, and the moment that illusion breaks, the modern home reveals its true nature. A structure optimized for convenience, not survival. When people hear that the real failure of the modern home is lack of thermal mass, most shrug it off as a technical footnote, another term filed next to R values and vapor barriers, but the truth is far more unsettling. Because once you understand what thermal mass actually does, you realize the modern house isn't just bad at holding heat, it is physically incapable of surviving without a constant supply of energy, almost like a life support machine that will let you freeze the moment the plug is pulled. The twist that surprises nearly everyone is this. Insulation only slows the escape of heat. It does not store heat, and walls built from soft, lightweight materials like drywall, fiberglass, and thin studs are essentially hollow shells that never absorb a meaningful amount of warmth, no matter how long you run your furnace. By contrast, medieval cabins built of dense old-growth timber acted like giant charged batteries. As each log warmed during the day, it held that heat deep in its fibers and released it back into the room, slowly through the night, creating a stable environment that barely budged even when temperatures outside crashed to life-threatening lows. This is why a well-built log wall rated at only R10 can outperform a modern R40 wall in real-world winter conditions. The modern wall stops heat for a moment, the log wall carries it through the night. And here's the part few people see coming. Once the fire goes out, the modern home begins losing heat instantly, while the medieval cabin grows warmer for another hour or two as the log's thermal lag releases stored energy into the room. It is a completely different philosophy. Modern construction resists cold. Medieval construction overwhelms it. As you think about that, I'm curious. Have you ever noticed how fast your home cools once the heating shuts off? Tell me your experience below, because this single detail changes how many people view their house forever. Air infiltration sounds like a harmless technical term, the kind you'd expect to see buried somewhere in a building code manual. Yet when you look deeper, you realize it's actually the most dangerous enemy your modern home quietly lets in through the living room. Even wrapped in house wrap, foam sealant, and every anti-draft technology we trust, a brand new home still leaks the equivalent of a 2x, 2-foot opening, like having an invisible door cracked open all winter without knowing you're living with it. The cold air doesn't just slip inside, it drives itself into every corner like an icy blade, sliding through outlets, racing down wall cavities, sweeping across the floorboards, and draining away every shred of warmth your heater is struggling to hold on to. On windy nights, you can feel it without seeing it. A razor-thin stream of cold brushing past your feet, a faint whistle threading through the doorframe, a sharp tap of chill at the back of your neck the moment you step into the hallway. The wind becomes a kind of invisible predator, hunting down heat without rest, and every modern house, no matter how sealed it looks, is really just a battlefield where warmth gets eaten away minute by minute. The frightening part is how many people never realize they're losing the war right inside their own bedroom. To understand why medieval cabins held warmth so effortlessly, you have to start where their builders started. Deep in the forest, standing before trees that had endured a century of winters, far harsher than anything most of us will ever face. These were not fast-grown plantation pines, but old-growth timber, slow, dense, heavy each ring, a record of years spent fighting cold, wind, insects, and drought. When dendrochronologists study cross-sections of these ancient logs, they find growth rings packed so tightly that some samples contain over 100 rings in a single inch, a density almost unheard of in modern construction lumber. That density isn't some poetic detail, it's a thermal engine. A 12-inch log cut from such a tree can weigh nearly twice as much as a modern board of the same size. And with that weight comes mass that absorbs heat during the day and releases it slowly through the night, like a natural battery built straight into the walls. It's a twist that surprises people. The forest engineered the perfect building material long before humans understood the physics behind it. Medieval builders simply learned to read those trees, choosing the slowest grown trunks because generations of observation taught them a simple rule. The harsher the tree's life, the better it would protect theirs. Today, we rarely think about where the wood in our homes comes from, but imagine this for a moment. Placed side by side, which wall do you think holds warmth longer, the featherlight lumber of the 21st century, or an ancient log that once survived 100 winters? Go on, take a guess. Among all the techniques medieval builders mastered, none inspires more admiration and more confusion among modern researchers than the scribe-fit joinery system, a method so precise it feels less like carpentry and more like a forgotten woodland ritual passed down through generations. On paper, the idea sounds simple. Take two logs and shape them until they rest perfectly together. But the moment you watch an old craftsman do it, the process turns almost mythic. He runs a giant compass along the curve of the lower log, scribing its exact shape onto the one above, then carves it away with quiet certainty, as if he's revealing the hidden geometry already sleeping inside the wood. A single wall can take weeks, not because the builders work slowly, but because the fit has to be flawless. When the logs settle under their own weight during the first years, every notch tightens, every seam locks with more pressure, and what begins as an assembled structure slowly becomes a single breathing organism. Modern engineers are still stunned by the data. Scribed log walls from the 1700s leak less air than new homes built to the strictest codes today, all without foam, caulk, or membranes, just wood shaped by hand and knowledge passed from father to son. The shrink-to-fit principle that looks almost accidental is actually living engineering. Each log drying, settling, compressing the moss chinking, sealing even the tiniest path for wind. And when you stand inside one of these cabins during a storm, you can feel something uncanny. The walls hardly tremble at all, as if the entire house is holding its breath to shield you. It leaves many wondering whether those old builders truly understood the physics or whether they were simply repeating a secret they never needed to name. If you've ever seen a scribe-fit log cabin in real life, tell me what it felt like, because those who've witnessed it rarely forget the sight. If the tight joinery of medieval cabins is the skeleton that holds everything together, then the material packed between those logs, sphagnum moss, is the living tissue that keeps the cold out. And the more you learn about it, the harder it is to believe that something this strange and powerful simply grows on the forest floor. Builders didn't choose it because it was soft or convenient. They chose it because sphagnum is, in the most literal sense, a living survival system. When fresh, each tiny leaf can hold up to 20 times its weight in water, but once dried and packed into a wall, those same cellular structures trap thousands of microscopic air pockets that act like natural insulation chambers. Its acidity is so strong that bacteria and fungi can't grow on it, a property so effective that during World War I, soldiers used sphagnum to pack wounds and even to preserve the bodies of fallen comrades until burial. An eerie historical footnote that shows just how extraordinary this moss really is. And here comes the twist that shocks almost everyone. Once dried inside a cabin wall, sphagnum never truly dies. Its structure stays springy for centuries, expanding and contracting with the logs as the seasons shift, sealing every microgap and refusing to rot, mold, or crumble. It's as if the wall itself is breathing, with the house adjusting, tightening, protecting. Medieval builders might not have understood the chemistry, but they knew one simple truth: nothing blocks the cold better than a material nature created to survive the harshest places on Earth. If the log walls of a medieval cabin act like massive thermal batteries, then the masonry heater at its core is the engine that charges them, a block of stone so deceptively simple that many visitors mistake it for decoration until they see what it can actually do. Unlike a modern fireplace that gulps warm air from the room and sends most of its heat straight up the chimney, the masonry heater is a controlled labyrinth where fire is burned fast and violently, yet almost none of its heat escapes. The flames roar through hidden channels carved inside tons of brick and stone, surrendering every degree of warmth into the heavy mass around them. The result feels almost supernatural. You feed the stove a small bundle of wood for 10 or 15 minutes, shut the iron door, and walk away, knowing the stone will radiate a soft, steady warmth for the next 12 or even 24 hours without ever becoming dangerously hot. During winter storms, families slept with their backs against its warm surface, feeling the stone breathe out heat long after the fire was gone, a sensation closer to resting beside a living creature than a piece of architecture. Modern visitors often blink twice when they hear the test results. One firing, 1 hour, and the house stays warm until nightfall. But medieval builders already knew, through centuries of cold, that no heater is more powerful than the sheer mass of stone heated the right way. One of the most misunderstood advantages of the medieval cabin is something modern builders rarely even consider: the deliberate shaping of temperature zones, a kind of thermal choreography that turns the entire house into a living organism with warm organs, cool limbs, and a cold outer shell built to absorb the worst of winter. Step into the main room at night, and it holds steady around 65 degrees, the radiant warmth from the masonry heater filling the air with a soft, invisible glow. But walk a few steps toward the sleeping alcove, and the temperature sinks into the mid-50s, not because the builders failed to heat it, but because they understood that under thick blankets and fur pelts, you only need your back against a warm wall, the stone still pulsing with heat like the quiet breath of another person lying beside you. Move again toward the hallway, and the air sharpens instantly. The corridor is intentionally cold, a narrow channel that feels like the spine of a glacier, trapping drafts so they never reach the living space. Open the door to the storage room, and the temperature plunges toward 40 degrees. A built-in refrigerator where root vegetables, smoked meat, and hard cheese survive the dead of winter without burning a single extra log. Meanwhile, the kitchen glows like the creature's beating heart, its surface is warm, its air layered with the residual heat of cooking. When you watch all of this working together, the house stops feeling like a structure and starts to resemble a finely engineered survival machine, tiered by temperature as if designed by someone who understood winter down to its every breath. If you've ever wondered why stepping into a medieval cabin during a winter storm feels strangely calmer than entering a modern house in the same weather, the answer lies in the final element of their survival system: how every component, from the foundation to the chimney, locks together into a single architecture of endurance. At first glance, the structure looks simple, but the deeper you study it, the more unsettling the truth becomes. These builders weren't improvising. They were executing a system so integrated that removing even one part would cause the entire design to collapse. The raised stone piers lift the cabin above frozen ground to stop heat from bleeding into the earth. The double plank floors, packed with moss or sawdust, create a barrier as effective as many modern insulations. The log walls act as both shield and thermal battery, storing warmth with a patience no foam panel can match. And the scribe-fit joinery keeps the house nearly airtight without ever trapping moisture. The masonry heater anchors everything like a warm, breathing heart, feeding heat outward through stone, brick, and the backs of sleeping alcoves, while the chimney routes its exhaust through upper spaces, so even the waste heat contributes to survival. Nothing is wasted. Every calorie of warmth has a destination. Even the cold zones, hallways, storage rooms, loft spaces reduce the overall heating load, proving medieval cabins weren't just warm, they were efficient in ways modern construction rarely achieves. Only when you view the system as a complete organism does the final twist emerge. These homes grow warmer and tighter as they age, improving with time instead of deteriorating from the day they're finished. That kind of resilience is almost extinct in the buildings we live in today. If you've watched this far, I genuinely want to know which part of this entire system strikes you as the most genius. Leave a comment below, and if you want more investigations like this, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of this series.